Thank you, Ed. As Ed mentioned, my name is Jeff Wood. I'm with McFarland Johnson. We have, I think, what's going to be a really interesting presentation for you all today. I was looking at Jennifer's slides, and it's going to be good. Jennifer is a public involvement specialist with McFarland Johnson. She's a forward-thinking public engagement professional with a 30-year record of success in developing and implementing innovative public engagement techniques and strategies for public and private sector clients. She has a passion for working with the public, governmental agencies, and project stakeholders, leading engagement efforts that result in optimal project outcomes. She has earned a reputation for excellence among clients and agencies by applying a broad range of skills, such as acting in the role of liaison between the client, multidisciplinary staff, regulatory agencies, and public stakeholders. She is trained and skilled in conflict resolution. On a personal note, I've known and worked with Jennifer on controversial airport projects for, I think, well over 15 years now.
Way too long.
I have seen her techniques in action. I've seen them and I use them myself. In fact, I used them in a controversial meeting for an airport project in Connecticut last night. So what she's talking about works. I know it does. So with that, I will turn it over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Jeff. That was such a nice introduction. I appreciate that very much. All right, so I am sharing my screen, everyone. Just bear with me here. So I just want someone on the team to confirm that my slide presentation with the angry crowd is appearing properly.
It's there. Okay,
thank you. So I want all of you to realize that by the look of this first slide, I want to have some fun. I want to have some fun with this topic. I want to have fun making fun of ourselves and how sometimes we are our worst enemies when it comes to public involvement. There's two items that I want to bring to your attention. You may have already received a PDF document on email from either Laura or Donna. That document is a list of best practices that I want you to use it. I want you to share it with your firm, your coworkers, your agency, and in your network overall. And that is different from what I'm going to talk about in this presentation. So you're getting two pieces of incredibly good information because I want your meetings and your engagement with the public to get better. It is good for our industry, and I want everything to be smooth for you. What I'm not going to talk about today, I'm not going to tell you how to answer the questions on our typically difficult subjects of air, noise, obstruction removal, or runway extensions. But what I'm going to talk about are things that you need to work on and improve in our roles. I know the audience is filled with agency staff, consultants, lawyers, airport managers. We work on master plan projects, CIPs, NEPA documents, PFAS issues, and all of this is going to help you improve your interaction with the public. So I hope you enjoy this, and if you do not learn things, money back guarantee. Okay? I put that out there, money back guarantee. Okay? So what is public involvement? Let's talk about just getting a reframing of what this really is, okay? It is an art form. When you are in front of an angry crowd, you need to think of yourself as the first violinist in an orchestra. It takes practice. It takes a lot of collaboration with your team or orchestra members. And there's a lot of trial and error to get to the point where you are the sole person or the MC and leader in front of an angry crowd. What I'm going to tell you today will work in person, large group meetings, small group meetings, one-on-one, and it'll also work virtually. It's a little harder to have it happen virtually, but it can be done with some practice. What we're going to do today in our half hour of fun and making fun of ourselves, going to go through some warm-up exercises that I assure you will make your meetings and interactions better. We are going to go over why toxicity is increasing. Why am I going to put forward an industry challenge to you? Top 10 best practices. Q&A. Okay, let's get going. Let's do this. Warm-up exercises. I do these depending upon the type of meeting and how toxic I think the meeting will be, anywhere from 1 hour to 4 hours before I even walk into the meeting room. It is critical to master these exercises that I'm going to go through. You need to engage your entire body and your entire brain. We are a left brain industry. That means we live and breathe on facts, figures, logic, SOP. The public wants your right brain. They want your compassion, your empathy. They want your feelings. They want your listening skills. You need to use your gut. When you are up in front of that angry crowd, you need to feel the energy of the room and really figure out how you're going to react and what you're going to say. And this is why I love this part of my job, because it's so challenging. You got to be fast on your feet. Okay, when I leave a public meeting, I am exhausted because it is truly a full body experience and I have thrown myself into the abyss. Changing perspectives. Again, before you walk into a meeting, you really have to focus on what is going on in your brain. Think about making yourself a detective. This really serves you well as the professional trying to explain a project and to address public issues. What is the public afraid of? What are the abutters thinking? What information is out there that might be erroneous that you need to correct? Be curious about all of these issues. Curiosity is really your best friend when you enter a meeting and you're entering into the unknown. Cognitive reframing. Okay, I'm going to mention that a few times as we go through this. Another exercise, remember that a public meeting, whether it's big, small, or whether you have one-on-one interaction with someone who's particularly upset, like in a abutter that's going through obstruction removal consultation with you, it's about them. I far too often see that a team of professionals thinks that it's about them. Or about themselves or their project. So put some effort into what is your audience thinking about and what is important to them. Brainstorm about these things with your closest team members who are working on the project. You'd be amazed at the topics and the ideas that you can come up with of what people might be concerned about that you haven't thought of previously. Many of you are athletes now or have been in the past. One of the greatest skills that athletes use is visioning. Put yourself in the living room of the person who is really upset about your master plan or your runway extension. Think about what is it that they could be thinking. It's really important. And what this does, it really helps you anticipate what that person is thinking. And it also helps create empathy in your own mind before you walk into the meeting room. This is very difficult for left brain professionals like we all are. Okay, there is no right answer when it comes to public engagement. There's no wrong answer. It is very messy. You have limited control and you have to be willing to just dive into the dark abyss. It is difficult, but these are things that if you can master, you can think that a meeting, it may not look like a success on the surface, but just being able to navigate through these aspects, that is a success to just get through the process at times. The ego. Ego is absolutely the enemy. It is not a competition with the public. You don't win with the public, and there's no losing with the public either. Other thing about ego is that you have to remember that people like ourselves, that crowd of people, they're very perceptive. If you walk into a meeting room, you or the entire team, and you have egos thinking you're right and you're going to compete and you're going to win, people pick up on that very quickly, and that definitely increases the toxicity. Self-awareness, critically important. I've had conflict resolution training, and this really helped me understand that luckily I have a compromising technique, and I'm also willing to enter something with a win-win. If you have these styles, there's actually 6 styles total, you should be the person up in front of an angry crowd. After you go through some self-awareness, if you are an avoider of conflict or you need to win at all costs, do not get up in front. That should not be your role. Pass it off to someone else who has a more a win-win or a compromising mentality. Okay, so those are those exercises, and I assure you, even if you can master a few of them, that will help you to be on your way to be first violin of the orchestra, standing at the room with an angry crowd. I think we've all noticed that toxicity is increasing. Okay, I haven't had a crowd that actually looks like this, but I've certainly had crowds in front of me that it feels like this is what's on their faces. It's scary at times. So why is toxicity increasing? Okay, here are some factors. These are research done by others. So the one item here I have at the bottom, rise of dehumanizing opposition. That's definitely going on in the media, but it also goes on in our industry. In my 30 years in the 8 different firms that I've worked for, I hear things like, why did that bleep bleep person buy a house next to an airport? And I think if you are a leader at a firm or an agency, that you need to begin to make efforts to absolutely ban that kind of dialogue that goes on. The team carries that with them into the meeting room. Other reasons why toxicity is increasing, I see the rise of tribalism. It's us against them, the team members, right? Our design is better. The public, they don't know what they're talking about. They're not qualified to give us their opinion. Okay. Again, if you're a leader in an agency or a firm, you should be banning this type of behavior. Let's talk just a slide or two about what I call the public meeting brain. We are all so busy. I know myself, when I go to a public meeting as a citizen, it has to be a subject that I'm pretty emotional about and compassionate about. So not only myself, but when I'm a professional dealing with an aviation project, I realize that every person sitting in front of me, their brain is on fire. Their glandular system, the amygdala, the pituitary, the hypothalamus, the stress, the blood pressure, it is all heightened. Okay, cortisol hormone. Plus you add on all of these other factors of what's going on in the world. You have angry crowd. You have to definitely deal differently with them and not assume that logic is going to prevail, because it normally does not throughout the meeting. It may at the end of the meeting, but throughout the meeting, it usually does not. So I also like to treat an angry crowd as though I am at a funeral, and so are they. People experience loss. It's a real emotion, and it's not always just because there is a person that has died. It is the loss of privacy, the loss of quality of life, the loss of aesthetics, loss of sleep, etc. Now, these are the 5 stages. Normally at a public meeting, you're dealing with people who are in the anger and the bargaining phase. Industry challenge. Everything I've gone over so far and everything I've seen in 30 years of my doing this type of work, I think that there's room for improvement. So just take a second for your own self, just self-check on a scale from 1 to 10, come up with a number. Okay. And it really doesn't matter what that number is, but if it is less than 10, there is room for improvement. Say, I want us to raise the bar. I think this is an often overlooked subject in our industry. And I remind the teams that I work with that, I mean, not always, sometimes projects are revenue driven from the airport, but often we have projects that are publicly funded by taxpayers' dollars. And I think it behooves us to get this part of our industry to be performed at a much higher level. That's why I want you to use this, share this, and also definitely that PDF document that should have been sent out to you. Please share that with everyone you know on best practices. So we don't want our meetings to look like this. We don't want our meetings to look like this either, okay? We want this. Whoa, I love your project, right? Or at least I accept your project, okay? People neutral, take an angry crowd and at least make them neutral. That's really a big benefit for me. And I'm very proud when I'm able to do that and able to do that with the teams of people that I work with. Okay, so how do we go about detoxing other than the things I've gone over so far? The exercises, the cognitive reframing, the brainstorming, about mind reading, the empathy, engaging your full body, left brain, right brain, gut, using your feet. Hey, how do we do this? We remove the triggers and have to understand basic human needs. An angry crowd is just like every other person you know in your life. Every person has triggers, and there are definitely aspects of public meetings, particularly relating to infrastructure projects that, again, we do poorly. We address these issues poorly. So we're going to go over this on how to remove the triggers and giving you some understandings of how to deal with basic human needs. They're humans. Okay, so most of you are old enough to remember David Letterman. I'm going to do the top 10, just like David Letterman would do his top 10, right? Classic television. Okay. Now, before I start with number 10, I want you to know that these are things that I have noticed. Some of the other details I've given you has been based on academics and research. These are my observations for 30 years of being in front of crowds and angry crowds in this industry. Okay, number 10. Live and breathe those warm-up exercises that I went over earlier. Money back guarantee. I promise you, if you can master those, your meetings will be better. Okay, quick recap here. I hope all of you go back to the recording and really study these subjects. That would mean a lot to me. Okay, number 9. Number 9 way to detox public engagement. Effectively reach your audience. Okay, everyone wants to be invited to a party, even though they might not go. They want the invitation. Okay, with technology, it is so easy with a little bit of effort to actually reach people. And also, don't stop at the abutters. That's kind of, I think, a JV move in most cases. It doesn't take that much effort to really pick the geographic area or entire neighborhood that really needs to be notified about some projects. Okay, don't take the easy way out. Now, there's so many things. I'm going to go through these super quick. I mean, there's so many engagement products. There's virtual engagement now. The one thing I will tell you, to see here I have in purple, if you think you're going to have a toxic project, always put a person's name, a real person, a phone number, and an email. That really shows transparency and accountability. Don't make people contact the webmaster to submit their information or their question. Number 8, make it easy to understand the project. This is one of my pet peeves. We're terrible at this as an industry. We so rely on our right brain and think that everybody is going to understand an engineering drawing or be able to find out what's happening by looking at something very obscure to the public. Be creative. There's so many different types of public meetings, depending upon your audience, the type of community you have, the objective, what type of project you are proposing. Open house is one of my favorites. You can give red carpet treatment. Many people need more time. They have a lot of questions, and the one-on-one red carpet treatment you can do at an open house is exceptional, an exceptional method to win people over and get them to understand the project. Virtual open houses, very easy to do, simple, cheap, even on a website. This is a very complicated one done by AECOM, but you can do it on a simple website as well. Listening session. We will go back to in-person meetings for sure. Listening session workshops, especially for master plans, are a wonderful format to use. Have a walking tour. Most people have never been on your airport. They have no idea. It's a big mystery. It's like Area 51, right? Nobody knows what's happening on the local airport. Try to do a walking tour. The public loves this stuff. Bring out the local STEM group, 8th grade STEM class. I mean, that's just great PR, and people really demystifies what's happening on these large facilities. Bring the project to the public. Great way to reach a larger audience, atypical audience. And if you want additional input by the masses of your community, besides just those people with that very angry brain that show up physically at the public meeting, bring the project out to the public. It'll really help balance out your overall input. Project booth. Excellent way to reach a very large audience. This is a photograph of myself and one of community members to save a bridge connecting New Hampshire and Maine, and it was an all-day event. It was an incredible PR move to get people to understand what was going to happen. Number 7. Monitor the community vibe before the public meeting. Okay, we've gone through all of this effort to reach people. Now you need to see what's coming back at you. Is anyone getting letters or sending letters to elected officials? What is the tone of any emails? What's happening on social media? What's in the news? Once you put a project out there, it's something is happening or there's a meeting, don't forget about it. Actively monitor. It make you much more prepared for what's going to happen. If you find things that are topic's going to be toxic or a project is toxic, try to meet in small groups with people who are unhappy well before the public meeting. Oftentimes you can solve many of these issues and prevent outrageous anger from occurring in a large crowd. Number 6, have the right etiquette, attitude, and room setup. You are under the microscope. You and your entire team of aviation planners, engineers, aviation managers, etc. Okay, if you have an angry crowd, they're going to be looking to find fault. Leave your phones in the car. Don't be happy. I can't stress this enough. Some of the worst things I've seen, runway extension project, and the project team is in the corner. This is not my project team, by the way. I was witnessing this. They're in the corner having a good time, laughing, catching up, and it just made the crowd really unhappy. Okay, take on that funeral etiquette. Match the energy of the room. Again, funeral etiquette. You also need to be able to anticipate and react to intense human stress, which I'm going to get into shortly. Again, no laughing, there's no smiling and there's no humor. These things will make people very angry. And it's hard to do. That's why I go back to, I said in the beginning, it takes a lot of practice. But this all can be done. My meetings go very, very well. I make sure my team embraces all of these items and this behavior well before we enter into a room. And I want all of your meetings to go well as also. So let's talk about room setup. This is another reason why toxicity really increases. Nobody wants a coach seat, okay? We want business class. They want a first class seat. I know this picture isn't exactly representative of a typical meeting room, but just the simple seating is a problem. You take angry people and you put them into like a sardine can in a hot, crowded room. You're asking for trouble, right? Make sure you accommodate all kinds of preferences for sitting. I like to sit in the back. I'm a little claustrophobic, so being in the back makes me really happy and reduces my anxiety level immensely. Try addressing children, refreshments, good audio. You must have good audio. There's nothing worse than people who are upset already and then they cannot hear what you are saying. Number 5, let the audience know what to expect. This is, again, we are our own worst enemies. This increases everyone's anxiety when they don't know what's going to happen. It's like going to the emergency room when you're sitting in a crowd at a public meeting for a project. Okay, how long is the presentation going to be? What topics will be addressed and why? When will questions be asked? Okay, I'm going to take a pause and just do this really quickly because this is important. You can't really manage an angry crowd. You have to organize it. Tell everyone when the questions start, you're going to go one row at a time, first row, second row, third row. And then everyone in the room knows when their question is going to be asked or when they can make a comment. Very critical. Let them know about decisions. Is there time for a second opinion? Number 4, high quality visuals. When people can't understand, this is what the crowd looks like. Not good. It's easy for us to create high quality visuals. We are learners. We are visual learners. Look at that percentage if we put higher quality visuals. Presentation screen, particularly at an in-person meeting. People at airports can't orient themselves. So when you have your screen up, put a board up showing the airport next to the screen. Go back and forth and explain to them where is the ramp extension? Where is the apron rehab? What taxiway are you talking about? Most often the people don't even live near where the projects are located. The airport is so large. And without them being able to orient themselves, that's going to increase toxicity. Image test. Give it to a high school student, high school seniors. They'll tell you whether or not it's going to be understandable for the general public who are not engineers and not aviation planners. Number 3, high quality speaking skills. There's an expectation when you are in front of an angry crowd, you will be a good speaker. You can see by this research how important your body language, your attitude, your voice, your tone, everything you say is so important. Technical facts, very low, right? See, they're looking at right brain here, using right brain, not so much left brain. Nonverbal skills. Get some training in public speaking. It's really important. Delivery. No acronyms, please. You take the most talented engineers and they get up in front of the room and they're talking about TOFAs and ROFAs and mil-specs and SARAs, okay, and ARFs and CBIS, all these things. No one knows what they are. I have had public speaking training. If any of you in this audience have control over budgets, please allocate money for training. Toastmasters, Dale Carnegie, private lessons, bring someone in your firm or your agency. There's an expectation that people will be good speakers. They're not there to read, they're there to listen. Number 2, don't be afraid of crowd dynamics and human emotions. This is the ladder of inference, how people learn. I recommend going back to this. If you can just understand these steps and know where people at a public meeting really begin to learn about the project, which is where I have the red arrows, this will be extremely useful for you and how to address a crowd and sequence the information. Someone who's very angry, it's only going to last 60 to 90 seconds. Okay, don't be afraid of this. Try to get to these people before the public meeting in a small group or one-on-one, but it's okay. Nothing bad is going to happen. It's just anger. Number 1. Okay, there's this slide, and then we'll go to questions. Number 1, just like David Letterman, who always had a twist for number 1, but it is always the truth. Here is my number 1. Number 1 way to detox toxicity at a public meeting. Remember, you are being paid to take a beating and not react. Do not react. People will try to throw the drama net over top of you, and then they get you, and then things go sour. Do not react, okay? Practice this if you have to. Okay, questions. And thank you all so much. I believe I went 2 minutes too long. So I rushed the last few slides. I did not want to go too late. So yeah, questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. I think we'll take the questions in the chat box. We have one. Is it important to tell a story of the project, the backstory?
If you think it's a good story, yes. Don't bore the audience. But if it's critical information that they need to understand of how you derived at what you're proposing, then absolutely yes.
Okay. Any other questions? I got one I'll throw out at you, Jennifer. A lot of times we run into a history of mistrust between, say, an airport and the surrounding community, and they're bringing all of that mistrust to the meeting. And it doesn't matter if you're the new director and you're the most honest person in the world. They don't care. They just reflect on the history. How do you handle that type of situation?
Well, it's often better to bring in someone who can be a mediator, whether it's someone from a project team or an outside consultant to, hash out issues one-on-one or a small group. The other thing to do is, if you're unable to do that, or if it's not appropriate to meet with small people, I would lay out a plan and just be as consistent and as transparent as possible on a daily basis. And I know it's very difficult. I completely empathize with those who run airports and how challenging it can be. But consistency and transparency is really critical to at least do the foundation of trust building.
Got a comment, great tips in here. Thank you. Another question. Do you find the positive economic impact of the airport a good story to tell an angry crowd?
That depends. It often doesn't go over well and doesn't resonate, because when people are losing sleep at night, they don't really care about the tax dollars that are generated or the jobs. It is a very important part of the story, but I would make that more of a, an aspect of a public meeting, but certainly not a primary focus of information.
Yeah, I think in my experience, most people really question those numbers, and you end up in a debate about the validity of those numbers.
Yeah. Yeah,
We've-
exactly.
We've got one more quick question. I think it's a quick one. Can you rehearse and role play?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's so critical. And if you have people on your project team that are willing to do it, it's really the best thing you can do. Because again, I go back my second slide, your first violin in an orchestra, it takes so much practice to be able to do this. It can be done. I can do it. I've practiced. I can do it like anything. But it just the role playing is a great way to get your skills to improve.
Great. I think we'll wrap it up. I'll just add to your answer though. If you're doing the rehearsal, especially with virtual meetings, practice like you play, do it from the spot where you're going to do. So you find out you got a funky internet connection or whatever. You want to do it exactly the way you're going to do the public meeting so you can flesh out the technical issues that may come up. So we'll wrap it up with that. Thank you everyone for listening in. I thought it was a great session. Hope you got as much out of it as I did. And I will turn it back over to Ed.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jeff and Jennifer.